Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kind of skip the order of the agenda. Ironically.
The next up, we'll have approval of the agenda. Thanks, Mac, for turning on the mic. I forgot that.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion on the agenda? All right, it has been motioned and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes. 1.04 is introduction of Elko County School District Student Board Member Caitlin Sutherland. Ms. Astro.
Well, I am pleased to be able to introduce Caitlin. Caitlin Sutherland is a senior at Spring Creek High School with a 4.0 cumulative GPA. She is involved with Student Council, National Honor Society, drama, and competitive dance. She has been elected to the Nevada Association of Student Council's board as a regional representative for a 2-year term. Her future plans are to study neuroscience at the University of Alabama in the fall of 2025 and become a psychiatrist. Welcome, Caitlin. We're glad to have you with us.
All right. No worries there, not necessary to do that. Thank you again for having us or joining us. 1.05 is receiving a presentation on the Spring Creek Middle School Veterans Day Flag Project. This is a non-action item. Ladies, please join us.
Hi, I'm Sally McDermott. I'm the principal at Spring Creek Middle School, and I'm here with Miss Mo. She is our 8th grade social studies teacher, and she came to our admin team with a great new idea this year that I couldn't wait to share with you. And so I'm going to let her speak about it, but we're hoping that it becomes a new tradition for our school. We like to take on a lot of community service projects. I'm sure you've noticed we do a lot of food drives. We have usually 3 trees at the festival of trees. We donate to other groups. We have a Christmas giving project. And so this is a new charity event that we participated in that also gave a lot of value to our students around Veterans Day.
All right, thank you. Hi, everybody. It's good to see you. So the DAV is the Disabled American Veterans, and this is an organization dedicated to honoring the veterans and educating the public about the great sacrifices and needs of veterans transitioning back to civilian life. The DAV Field of Flags is what we got to do, and it empowers our community to set up fields of American flags to honor all of the veterans from Nevada, especially, that help raise critical funds and support ill and injured heroes. Each flag that we were able to plant, and we were able to plant 48 of them, represented one veteran from Nevada. And it also showed our unwavering commitment to serving all veterans as they have sacrificed so much for our country. All donations raised critical funds to support DAV's life-changing services for veterans in need and their families. We were able to have our 8th graders participate in this year, and we're hoping to expand. We were able to raise $540. We had hoped to raise $500 and were able to exceed that. So we were pretty excited about that. And for every 24 flags we planted, they cost us about $250 for a total of 48 flags planted. We had this event on November 15th, and Mr. Matt McCarty came out and gave our presentation on flag etiquette and a little bit of history, which the kids really enjoyed. We planted the 48 flags in the ground that you can see in the picture there. Students of families that donated money were especially asked if they would like to plant one or multiple flags. And then we just gave the other students who volunteered as they came down from the seats that they were in, if they would like to plant a flag in honor of any of their family or friends. We hope to make this an annual event, and we hope that we can have it grow from year to year. I've already spoken to one of our community members who would like to have their branch of, I'm not sure how I want to say this, sorry, of the Veterans Office come in and do a presentation for us and just make sure that it grows every year. It also, we hope to collect stories from hometown heroes, hometown veterans, so we can make it even more specific and special. Does anybody have any questions or anything?
Thank you, Ms. Moe, Ms. McDermott. We appreciate that. I was honored to be able to participate, and I congratulate your students on being able to embrace something like this and to be successful at it.
And thank you for coming. It was really nice to have you there and hope it's great again next year. Thank you. Thank you.
1.06 is recognition of our October STARS recipient. This is a non-action item. Mr. Anderson, Ms. Neal.
It's me.
Alrighty.
Just waiting for you to turn it over to me. Thank you. Yeah, pretty much. So we're going to acknowledge another one of our STARS recipients today. And that is Miss Stormy Barrett from Transportation. So I see you in the back there, and you don't get to sit there. You have to come up to the podium area. Come on up, Stormy. Thank you. So everyone, I introduce you to this bashful person named Stormy, who is an excellent driver for our transportation department. She drives out of our Elko Transportation Center. And she actually received 2 different nominations, and I'm going to read what those said about her, okay? The first one, very brief, but passionate as well. A lot of exclamation points, so I'm going to do my best to, to display that enthusiasm. So it starts and says, Stormy is a superhero. She demonstrates an extraordinary commitment to keeping our kids safe and in a happy transportation environment. And that was by Sean Karan? You say yeah when I say both. Which one is it?
I don't really.
You're not sure either. Okay,
perfect.
perfect.
You're good with whatever.
Awesome. And then the other one, she was nominated by someone named Martha Contreras. And she said, my son is in special education. Both my husband and I work a 5-4 rotation schedule. This is the 3rd school year that Miss Stormy is my son's bus driver. She has been amazing with us, works with our crazy schedule to help us get him to school and back on days we're working and unable to support him. To say my kid loves Miss Stormy is an understatement. He enjoys riding the bus. She is patient and understanding when he's having a bad day. She goes out of her way to make her students feel special. For Christmas, she gets her students books, writes them a little note, and wraps them. My son really enjoys books. When he chooses a book, he remembers when it is the one he received from Miss Stormy. She is an amazing person who goes above and beyond for her students, and I hope she gets recognized. Love that personal touch. And I joked about this when I read it the first time. I'm going to say it again. Thank you for helping support our goals of improving literacy in our school district. Books are great. And to hear that a kid loves riding the bus, like that's a good part of their day, is pretty awesome. It shows that you're doing a great job and that you care about the kids. It's not just about driving them to and from school, but it's about helping them have a safe and warm and welcoming environment. And that starts on the bus and ends on the bus. And so I'm glad he has someone who cares about him to start and end his day. And hand off and receive the handoff when he's done at school too. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And give you a round of applause here. I want to shake your hand. As always, a thank you to our sponsors for the S.T.A.R.S Award program. And those are Leanne's Floral Designs, who always puts together great bouquets. They were very fall themed this time around. And thank you to Maverick Gaming, the Rotary Club of Elko Desert Sunrise, and to the Star Hotel. And that's it.
Thank you very much. And again, congratulations, Stormy. 1.07 is input from the public. This is a non-action item. I'm not going to read through everything if nobody's going to stand up. We did have a request, though, from the public to acknowledge a certain birthday today and to request a singing of a song. So if you all would join me in singing happy birthday to Dr. Byers. Happy birthday, Josh. We would appreciate that. Happy birthday to
That was completely unnecessary, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
But it was fun.
That look of gratitude made it worth it.
That's not fancy.
Thank you for humoring us. We appreciate this. 2.01 is receipt, review, and possible approval of the 2023-2024 Elko County School District Audit as prepared by I. Bailey. This is for possible action. Ms. Terry Gage.
Well, hello. Thank you so much for having me on this cold night. And we're on time this year for the audit, so very exciting. And thank you for all of the staff, Cassie and her crew. We couldn't have done this without her. They worked very, very, very hard on this. So you have two documents in front of you. We're going to go through the audit report. Most of the items we go through in the audit report are what's covered in the letter. There's certain things I'm required to go over with you, and that's kind of what the letter outlines. So the bound audit report. And if you have questions, please stop me as we go through, and I'm happy to entertain those as we move along. A couple of pages in after the table of contents is page 1. This is the independent auditor's report. These are your financial statements. What we give you is the opinion on the audit report. So I'm happy to say that you have what we call a clean audit opinion. The second paragraph says that your financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects as of June 30th, 2024. So the exact kind of opinion you want to have on your financial statements. When we do the audit, we have a focus on what we call major funds. So your major funds are your larger funds of the district. General fund, federal fund, special ed, education fund, the state grant fund, and the capital improvement fund. So we're just gonna kind of highlight those larger items. All right, we're gonna go straight to page 15. On page 15, this is called a statement of net position. Very similar to a balance sheet that many of you might be used to. It starts off with assets less liabilities equals your total net position. The school district has a deficit net position of $27.8 million. The reason you have a deficit net position, just like many local governments, is you have what we call the net pension liability and the other post-employment benefit liability. So those are liabilities that come on to your statements for PERS and basically health insurance. And so that's what causes the deficit. Those two amounts add up to about $250 million. So when you look at your unrestricted deficit, it's $262 million. So that's what makes up the majority of that. And I know we've had conversations on what those liabilities are each year, but they're based on actuarial valuations on if everybody joined PERS as of today, that would be your liability for your net pension liability. Same thing with OPEB. If everybody drew down today, that would be your liability. But that liability is going to be paid out over many, many, many years to come. Some of the significant changes this past year, cash and investments overall went down about $14 million. It was $45 million last year. This year, it's about $30 million. Now you have a second line there. It's called restricted cash. So that's about $30 million. That is, the majority of that is your Oahe school. You received half of those funds from the state. You received about $32 million. You've spent between $2 and $3 million. And so this is what is remaining plus interest that you've earned on it. You've earned about $1 million in interest. So that's sitting there in restricted cash because you're not supposed to use it for any sort of operations. So we showed that separately. Your capital assets this past year increased about $7 million. About $3 million of that is the Oahe school, your design costs. For that, you had about $1.2 million in buses. You had another, I'm sorry, $1.2 million in buses and other vehicles. You had $1.2 million in improvements to the different buildings, fire alarm upgrades, electrical upgrades, equipment, and you had about $1.1 million in new like software leases and other equipment leases. Down under liabilities, there's a line about the fifth one down that says unearned revenue, and it's about 29.6 million. The majority of that is related to the Abuahi School. So that's where that revenue sits until you actually spend it. And then it'll go onto your income statement where you'll recognize that revenue. Your net pension liability is 147 million. Last year was 152 million, so it did go down. And you have a percentage of the state's proportion, you have a proportionate share of the state's pension liability. So your percentage is 0.080845. So if you look at all the local governments in the state of Nevada, that's your percentage of that pension liability. And then, like I say, your other post-employment benefit liability is about $98 million. All right, now we're gonna jump right to page 36. On the bottom of page 36, we're required to note any statute violations that we find as part of our audit. We did have a few items where you exceeded your budget for a few different line items right at the bottom of page 36. Two of them in the state grant fund. You exceeded the budget 353,000 in one department, and Cassie and I were talking about that. It looks like there was a whole department that somehow didn't go into the budget. You had the revenue that went in, but somehow I think it just didn't get budgeted. And then there was a small $4,300 over expenditure for vocational programs. The largest over expenditure, which we'll talk about in more detail, was for the self-insurance health fund. That overspent the budget about $2.3 million, and we'll kind of get into some detail on that in just a few moments. Page 37, we also have to note if you have any deficit fund balances. So you did have two funds that had deficits. One was the PCFP at-risk fund. The deficit was about 209,000. Last year was 336,000. So it actually, we got it down a little bit, about 128,000 less than last year. And the self-insurance fund deficit is 6.7 million. Last year it was 2.5. So that deficit has grown about 4.1 million. So like I say, we're going to kind of talk a little bit more detail about that fund in just a few moments. Page 62. The bottom of page 62, that is your general fund. So it basically starts on page 59 and goes to page 62. So that's the main operating fund of the district. You ended the year in the general fund with a $12.2 million ending fund balance. You had budgeted $3.3 million, so about $8.8 million over where you budgeted. Great. We all like to see that. You've heard me say in the past, you don't want your ending fund balance to be less than 8.3% of expenditures. 8.3% is 1 month, 1/12. So you want to make sure you have enough cash basically to pay for 1 month, no less than 1 month of expenditures. Right now you're at about 11%. So if we took that deficit in the health insurance fund and we used the general fund dollars to pay that off, you would end up with a 4.8% ending fund balance. So I think my common theme tonight is going to be, we really got to look at that health insurance fund. And I know you've spent time going through the plan and having some increases, but I think we're seeing across all of our governments, healthcare costs are going up, and it's really hitting your guys' bottom line. And I just think you just have to continue to monitor that, look at where it's going, look at how you're going to try to fund that deficit. And if you use the general fund dollars to fund it, you would be below that 8.3%. So just something that I know everybody here is well aware of it. But I just think that we really need to watch that. If you continue along that path, and if it's as bad in 24, 25 as it was in 23, 24, where the expenses were really high, I mean, you just don't have the cash to sustain that kind of costs in the health insurance fund. So just something I know nobody wants to think about, but we gotta think about it and look at it and determine what we're gonna do about that. Okay, page 75. On page 75, this is your capital improvement fund, pay as you go. So I was really excited to see we have, starting in 24-25, we're gonna have that 20 cents property tax going back into pay as you go. Pay as you go ended the year at about $14.7 million in ending fund balance, but only $82,000 in property taxes that last year. That would have been like delinquent taxes from the last few years. So starting in 24-25, we're gonna start seeing money come back into pay as you go to help with some of these capital improvement projects. So out of that 15 million that's left in ending fund balance, I know you have several projects that you had started at the beginning of 24-25 that'll start to bring that amount down. The biggest one being the food service, food science lab at the Spring Creek High School. So that'll be about $5 million. So that'll start to eat that balance down a lot. Okay, page 92. Just to belabor the point, this is the self-insurance health fund. And this is where we show that it was at a $6.7 million deficit. Your premiums that basically you're charging that the school district pays for your employees, plus you charge for dependents, you brought in about $17.8 million in revenue, but your expenses were $23 million. So as we all know, just those healthcare costs are really skyrocketing, that led to the deficit and the statute violation where you overspent your budget. And I'm happy to entertain any questions on that.
Was just curious what the deficit is, or that's not from escalating costs, it's from lack of revenue.
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. You have.
Yeah, or 1.8 of it, yeah. I was just curious
So
why that was
your
below budget.
premiums that you're paying for all of your employees, plus you're charging for your dependents, that revenue hasn't kept up with the cost of basically inflationary times with your healthcare costs. So I think we just got to try to balance that back out where your premiums or your deductibles, different things on that plan need to be looked at to try to get that revenue more in line with the expenditures. And I think it's been quite a few years that you've not had premium increases. You had more, I think, changes in the deductibles. Is that right, Cassie?
Yeah, we made a change to the deductible, sorry, Cassie Stolke, we made a change to the deductible that would bring about $1 million in. But if you actually wanted to see where the revenue would meet the expenses, our premiums would need to be about $1,100 per person. So we're about $300 short.
Did that answer your question? Okay. Okay. And like I say, happy to sit down and try to brainstorm and come up with different ideas to try to help with that. All right, now we're going to go all the way to page 108. So 108 is your schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So this is all your federal funds that come in during the year. You received about $16 million in federal funds this past year. Last year was $17.6 million. So down about $1.6 million. The biggest decrease in that is the COVID funds are starting to dwindle down. We had, we call it a single audit. So we test those federal funds each year. So this year we had 6 major programs that we tested as part of our audit process. We did have, I think it was 3 findings that we're going to go over relating to the single audit. But I think significantly better and less findings than we had in the prior year. So I was really happy to see that. And we'll go over those in just a couple more pages. All right, now we're gonna go to page 111. So financial statement findings. As part of the audit process, if we see deficiencies in your internal controls, or we come up with where the financial statements need to have some sort of adjustment to them, we usually accumulate them right here on this page. And it's under our report preparation finding. So once again, I think significantly less than the prior year. So I was really happy to see that. Most were within the health insurance fund. So I know that that's something we're working with Cassie and her department just to make sure that everything is getting reported correctly in that fund. What happens in the health insurance fund is when you pay premiums to that fund, you also advance money that are over and beyond those premiums that you're paying for the employees. And all of that was going to premium revenue versus being like a transfer in, transfer out, where you as the board can then see, hey, here's our premiums and they're 15 million. And here's our transfers that we're having to pay over and above that premium to try to balance that fund. And they were all getting combined up into premiums. And we took a look at that, and we kind of like them to be separated, because then you as a board have a little bit more transparency, that you see our premiums are this amount and we're having to supplement that fund this amount, to where then you can have better information to try to start correcting the course of where that fund is heading. So we had about $4.1 million that was up in premiums that we just moved into a different line item so you could better see that.
Terry, can I pause you for just a moment? I apologize.
Yes.
Is it just coincidental that that's almost the same amount as our change in net position? So did that happen only in 23, 24, or was that a carryover and that impacted net position?
I think you had the same thing happen in 22, 23 that we had as a finding. And I think last year the audit was much later, so I think it rolled into 23, 24. So it kind of rolled into a finding in both years.
Okay, thank you.
You only fund the health insurance fund for the cash you need at any given point in time. So say you take out $1 million per each payroll for health insurance. You only give the health insurance fund the cash that they need. And sometimes they need more than that, and sometimes they need less than that. So I think that's what causes that inequity a little bit. So I think it's just kind of accounting for it a little bit differently, to where then you guys have the information where you know if you overspend, you can see that number easier, to where you can then start making decisions to say, hey, we're having to supplement this fund a lot more than we normally would have to. And then you can make decisions sooner on increasing rates or making some sort of change.
Thank you.
There were a couple of items relating to accounts payable. There was a prior year accounts payable for $229,000 that wasn't reversed. And then there was a current year payable for $501,000 relating to design costs on the Oahe school that wasn't correctly accrued. And then the last two were relating to the health insurance fund, where there was a prior year transfer that didn't get correctly reversed for $800,000. And then current year accrued salaries and health insurance for $900,000 in the SB 231 fund. So that's the fund for the state salary increases. That just didn't get recorded correctly, and 147 in the general fund. So mostly payroll type related. But I do think those are getting cleaned up. I think now we're kind of another year into it, and Cassie's putting in a lot of controls to we're starting to correct a lot of these. So I'm really glad to see that. All right, next page. Overall finding over cash and bank reconciliations. I know your accounting system makes reconciling the cash causes it's been a little difficult, because just making sure that those transactions get reconciled correctly. And I think that's probably been something for 3 years you guys have been dealing with. And I think finally we have cash reconciled. But I included a finding that it wasn't done until after June 30th for the year. So it just wasn't timely reconciled. And I think now the accounting department has been playing catch up and they're getting more up to date and up to speed on reconciling cash. A couple of student activity funds that weren't reconciled completely to the general ledger. And then a couple of student activity funds where we did some control testing and there should be sign-offs for deposits on all the receipts by somebody in the schools. And out of a sample of 40, we had 2 that didn't, or 3 instances where they didn't sign off on those receipts. So just more control type testing. And then the next couple of pages were all our findings relating to the single audit. I think huge improvement from the previous year. The first one was relating to impact aid and the reports that you file with the feds. We had this finding for impact aid and another one in just a minute where the information, the source documents that were part of that report weren't saved. So we couldn't test to make sure what was in the report matched the source documents because you just didn't have them. We were able to go back and recreate what needed to be done. And we think what was filed was materially correct, but we're just saying, please save the source documents because your auditors are going to ask for it and test it. So that was the issue with impact aid. Procurement, on page 114, we had for the National School Lunch Program and the coronavirus funds where there were several contracts, 1 out of 9 where you didn't have 3 vendors, quotes from 3 vendors for those contracts. And then 1 out of 18 where we were missing some of the required provisions under the grant that are required to be in the contract. I think significantly better. Last year, our procurement finding was much, much larger. And I think most of those have gotten buttoned up, but you had like 9 months of the year before you had implemented new procurement standards. And I think those kind of fell into that time period. And then the last one was matching and level of effort. Kind of like the one for impact aid, you didn't have the support to prove your matching and level of effort. We were able to back into the number, but there just wasn't the support for us to test. And we're just saying, please keep that support. That's all I got. I think, like I said, I'm really proud about the progress that the accounting department has made. We couldn't have done this without the help of Cassie and her crew, CJ, the other Cassie, and everybody's just been great. We certainly appreciate all their help, and I'm happy to entertain any questions.
What's that? No questions. All right. Terry, briefly, under section 2, the financial statement findings, neither of those have a note of a repeat finding from a prior year, but under section 3, those do. Is that just an accounting?
The procurement had a repeat, right? Is that what?
Well,
repeat, yes.
So I apologize. So there are some that are identified as a repeat.
Yes.
But those that are under the section 2 don't have an indication as to whether or not there was a repeat. And is that just an accounting audit process?
On the single audit portion, so the federal we're required to put that in there.
Okay.
For the financial statement ones, page 117, talk about if they're a repeat or not. So
Okay.
it's just put in a different place.
Okay, thank you.
The report prep is a repeat. And the cash balances, it was partial repeat. So all of them are partial repeats, except for the 2, the impact aid and the level of effort.
Thank you.
But I would say partially implemented as well. So you'll probably always have the report prep. Yep. Yeah. You probably, Matt, you've heard me give a lot of presentations, and I would say 99% of my audit clients have the report prep because we prepare your financial statements for you.
Mm.
And that's normal in rural Nevada.
We just don't have the staff to be able to.
Yeah, it's very normal. I think I have 2 entities and they're the larger governments that prepare their own statements.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's fair to say, I think, or maybe this is a question. Terry, is it fair to say that given that our previous year's audit was so delayed and didn't get, I think, officially filed until May? And then we immediately turned around July 1 and started auditing again, that it stands to reason that pretty much every finding from last time was still or pretty close to those things. Those could be a lot of carryover because there was only roughly 6 weeks to even do anything about it.
I would agree with that statement.
Okay. And even with that, progress has already been made.
100% agree
Okay.
with that
Thank you.
statement. Correct. I think we actually started the single audit 1 week after we presented this audit report. So those procurement findings don't surprise me at all that they carried forward. And like I say, I think you guys have made tremendous progress. The only thing that gives me a little angst is the health insurance that we just need to continue to work on and to try to, tackle that and figure out a plan ahead. But I have seen tremendous progress and continuing to make more progress and learning and, improving our controls. So yes, very, very pleased.
Further comments or questions from the board? Ms. Gage, thank you very much
Thank you.
to you and your team. And while you're up here, and I mean, I guess you can go sit down if you'd like, but Cassie, thank you very much.
Agree.
With expenditures of $150 million, to see what we're seeing is amazing. You've done a great job, you and your team, and we appreciate all the work that you've done. So thank you for having as clean of an audit finding as we have.
Agree.
Well done. Thank you again, Terry. All righty. 2.02 is receipt, review, and possible approval to go into design.
We need a
Oh,
motion.
we do need a motion. Thank you. Yes, that would be helpful. Thank you very much.
I'll help you out. I move to approve the 23-24 Elko County School District audit as prepared by Ide Bailey.
Second.
Perfect. A few seconds there. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Any further discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes. Now we'll move on to 2.02, receipt, review, and possible approval to go into design for grammar number 2 boiler replacement and relocating the main office. This is for possible action. Mr. Stelke.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, so the project scope of work includes removal of the existing single steam boiler. And then we will install 2 kind of hot water boilers and then the kind of heating units in each classroom at grammar. And then when we kind of looked at this project for security issues, moving the office from the playground area where you kind of enter everything to the street over on the side and from there, so.
The state now where the office is requires us to leave the campus. I don't want to say insecure, but it's not secure as it should be. In order to access the office at grammar number 2, there is a gate that you walk right through the playground area to get to that office. And the door to the office has a nice buzzer, but to let people through, but that leaves the public having to walk through the playground area. There's a great fence there, but the fence is left unlocked for everybody. So significant safety issue and finding, and this is a project that we've talked about for a lot. It hasn't really been it's not like a major project necessarily, that portion of it. The boiler part, we've been talking about that one for quite a long time, even back to when Stephen was new in his job. And when Casey left, it was, hey, we really got to get this mechanical upgrade essentially done for grammar number 2. So a little bit of a combination of one just a need to keep the building running and another for the safety of our students and staff there.
So just a question about, we're removing a steam boiler and installing hot water boilers. Is there a cost difference? Are steam boilers no longer something that is used? What's the reason for the change in that?
The change would be efficiency and kind of safety as well. Steam boilers can be, they're fine, but they could be problematic, right? But so that we would kind of want to just move everything over to hot water boilers. That's kind of what we've had. So moving forward, that would be kind of what we've installed in most of our schools, and that would be the best option for grammar.
Do we have estimated costs for design and for actual construction once that's?
Yeah, so we had a proposal from Petty and Associates, which would be doing the mechanical upgrade. Stephen was in that position when that happened, but it was about $1 million to do the upgrade. We've got to build a boiler room downstairs. Codes change. The school's only 97 years old, so we would have to do a couple little different things and kind of having redundancy in that school. The boilers would be like a lead lag, so one would run for a little while, the other one would run for a little while. So that would just help with maintenance and costs like that. But that was probably about 1.5 years ago, Jeff. So, everything's changed, right? So, we'll talk to Dan and we'll get a tighter number, but I'm guessing probably like $1 million plus, 1.2 could be, right? So
That's for the entire project?
yeah.
Okay.
Just to clarify, so Petty and Associates were also looking at the architectural removal and relocation of the office?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
Yep.
Additional comments or questions?
So are we putting in a system, so it's going to be another unique system to that school? Or are we putting in a system that might overlap with some of the other systems we've put into that?
Exactly, overlap the systems
So
that
we
we
could
have,
potentially-
right? So yeah, it's something to make maintenance and going forward a lot easier for us. We don't want a steam boiler. We want a, hot water boiler and hot water system going through. I think in the past, they looked at doing cooling for this, but since we have limited funds, we're just gonna do the hot water boilers, move forward with that, hopefully. And then since we're kind of doing construction, let's get the kids safe and move the office over to the front, so.
Thank you.
Additional comments or questions? All right, hearing none. What is the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve to go into design for Grammar 2 boiler replacement and relocating the main office.
Second.
All right, there's a motion on the floor with a second. Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Stalkey. And 2.03 is receipt, review, and possible approval of proposed changes to policy FFC, Method of Public Work Contract Award. This is for possible action. This is the second time it's come back before the board. And I did make some changes as were requested in our meeting in Wells, which are listed under the document possible revisions 2. However, I was delayed in getting this document to legal. So legal has added 2 minor things under the category up above legal. He's also added NRS 338.169 subparagraph 2. And under subsection 2, the beginning of that subsection now reads, subject to compliance with the statutory limit of 2 public works in a calendar year, comma, projects with estimated probable cost, etc. So in essence, we are restricted under statute to no more than 2 public works using a construction manager at-risk method, according to our legal team. So I wanted to make sure that folks were aware of that. And if we need to table this so that everyone has an opportunity to read through that, we can. But otherwise, the rest of the changes that were made or recommended are present.
Can you repeat that? I missed what you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So basically, I was tardy in getting this out. Rob didn't have an opportunity to get the review back to us prior to the posting of the item on the agenda and the backup. So NRS 338.169 subparagraph 2 limits the number of projects in which a construction manager at risk can be utilized for construction to 2 in a calendar year. And so that NRS is indicated in the legal heading up above, and now paragraph 2 of the policy starts by saying, subject to compliance with the statutory limit of 2 public works in a calendar year. Then continues on with projects with an estimated probable cost of $10 million, et cetera.
All right.
Further discussion from the board?
That might be picky, but 1D might read, that was my suggestion last time, but to say any other method approved, and because we've listed 3. And so it seems kind of.
Yep, absolutely. I think it's an easy enough change. But I'll leave that to the maker of the motion. How would the board like to proceed?
I'd like to make a motion to approve policy FFC with the changes that legal has done, as well as add the verbiage that Jeff has added.
Second.
All righty. Motion and second. Is there further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes. Moving on to 2.04, receipt, review, and discussion of proposed changes to policy JDFD, student discipline, procedure for administering discipline, formal due process, non-action item.
Thank you. So this one, 2.04 and 2.05 are, they sort of go hand in hand, but given that one is a revision and one is a new policy, we can talk about them separately. But before we get too deep into it, what I want to make sure is clear, and this was part of the reason for why we had to pull this 2 weeks ago, was there was just plenty of confusion about it, and we wanted to make sure it was right, and also give 2 meetings worth of time to look at and do first reading and second reading. But what's important to note is that, and a lot of this is kind of legal speak, but it's very relevant to each policy. So the first one that we're talking about now, JDFD, is very specifically and only about how the district deals with due process when it comes to student discipline. Okay, and that is different than JDFG. JDFG is specifically about the appeals process. The due process that we're talking about in JDFD is all about how our district and when our district decides to carry out the due process. JDFG statutorily through NRS requires us to do certain things. And so that is why JDFG has been created, okay? So I know we're on 2.04, but I feel like those are important. And when you're thinking about, well, why does it say it in this one versus not this one, or why are they different? That's because due process is different from appeals. And those are very important distinctions to be made. So with that being said, the other thing I want to point out that you're going to see and might be a little confused about from this policy to the next one is in this policy, it talks about long-term suspension, expulsion, or permanent expulsion. And in the other one, it talks about significant suspension, expulsion, and permanent expulsion. And they are intentionally different because NRS uses the term significant suspension when talking about appeals, but that is not relevant when we're talking about due process. Long-term suspension is something we have defined for ourselves as basically greater than 2 weeks of school for any single incident. So prior to going 4-day, that number used to be 10. Anything greater than 10 days would be considered a long-term suspension. Now that we are 4-day school, we call that 8 days. So that being the case, we introduced some definitions there. The other thing to point out, sorry, before we go too much farther, expulsion and permanent expulsion, we don't use those terms quite the same way as the state does, so I just want to make some other clarification. So for us, long-term suspension, anything greater than 2 weeks of school for a single incident. Expulsion here means anything greater than a semester, but less than a school year of time. And then a permanent expulsion would mean you are gone from our district for time and all eternity. That's an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. So those, I think I reference that because some of us might hear the word expulsion and think that means that kid is gone forever. That's what permanent expulsion means. Expulsion here means you're gone for up to a year. Okay. So the terms can get conflated a little bit. So there are some definitions there, and then you'll notice it says see policy JDFG for additional definitions, and there are some of those are in there as well. The 10 has been changed to an 8. As I indicated before, a couple other little edits. You're gonna see or designee, superintendent or designee in there a lot. And that is intentionally because depending on whether it is a long-term suspension or an expulsion or a permanent expulsion, that is going to be different from our standpoint of who is assigned to handle the due process elements of depending on which one of those is happening, okay? So, and we wanted to be cautious about using specific titles because if Paul goes out on extended leave and I have something in there that says the Director of Secondary Instruction, well, I don't have one for 6 weeks. Who's going to run those? So we just say designee, and it's up to me to determine who's doing those. A few more edits going down, and then let's see. Changes to terminology to reflect up above with expulsion, permanent expulsion, etc. And then when you get to 10, there's a little bit of difference, a little bit of changes there, but it mostly still reflects our current practice. So that's talking about long-term suspension and expulsion. So in both of those cases, I am either I or the designee, the designee would review the decisions that were made and make a written, and give a written decision within 3 school days. And then in the case of a permanent expulsion, I will review all that and make a written decision, okay? And again, this is only talking about the due process. So everything up until the appeal, where an appeal is granted. And then the appeals are covered in JDFG. So I think that's my explanation for now. There are a lot of things that are intentionally not detailed because situations are so unique and different. However, we do have pretty clear procedures of if it's this type of suspension or expulsion, this is the route we go, and we have that be pretty consistent. So anyway, that is those are the edits, and to make them also consistent with how we get into the appeals process and the other policy. So any questions or comments or suggestions for this one?
Mainly the motivation for the change. Is this due to statutory requirements, you were saying, or?
So the appeals, the next policy was required by statute. And so because we had to do that one, it basically activated other terminology changes. So we had to update a lot of that terminology in this one. Like I said, Jeff, there really isn't much in here that substantially changes how we do things. It's clarification and it's made to jive a little bit with the other one.
Well, one that jumps out to me here is in number 10, where it goes from a suspension or, what did it say exactly? Would be subject to board review and decision, and that eliminates that.
Yes. So the board, so in the next policy, the board is included in the appeals part of it. So we didn't have a process before about appeals specifically. It had board decision, and board decision would be more along the appeals line of things. So this is creating a delineation between due process and the appeals process.
So that would actually be addressed then in the following policy.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
The board retains pretty much the same role for those permanent expulsions in the next one. And then the other things that changed in 10, before it was much more vague. It just said in cases of, in all cases, basically, my decision was final, right? And so there's a little more, there's a lot of words that have been added in there, and word order changed a little bit. But I guess what I just want to reassure you of is really not much has changed, and that it wasn't very clear before. And I recognize as I say it, it's not super clear now. It is accurate though, to how we handle those due process portions. And again, this is just about the due process.
Could I just ask, like the 8 school days on the day part, like one says hearing to commit, I'm on number 7, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Why it's 5 school days, one of them says 3 days after, like are those because you have to, or that's just a amount of days that you chose? Like I understand the 8 days, this.
I think those are timelines that, yeah, I don't believe there's a statutory requirement to do 3 days versus 5 days for due process. I can look into that a little more. I hear what you're saying. If we edited 10 down to 8, why isn't 5 down to 4? 3 wouldn't go down to 2 3/4, so we'd probably just leave 3 as 3. But that's a great question. We should probably look into that and see if any of those are internally or if they are required by statute.
Okay, and then I had a question about page 4, 9L.
Hold on one second, please.
Sure.
That was on. Okay, 9L you said?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Just it says must either represent the administration or the fact finder, but not both. So does that mean the fact finder needs legal counsel? That both sides would need legal counsel? They just can't be the same? I just wasn't sure on that, of what that meant.
I think it's just saying that they can't represent both sides.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that the fact finder needs counsel, just if they
no.
chose to have it or
yes,
something.
if one side or the other, let's say legal was kind of had to be involved on one side and the other side wanted legal counsel, we would have to come up with another party to do that.
If I may, additionally, the fact finder is itself employees of the district. It's a panel.
Yes.
And so now you've got 3 district employees and the administration, which is a district employee, but the legal counsel, has an obligation to represent all district employees, but in this case, they can't, if that helps any, if I'm reading correctly.
You're correct. And in JDFG, it does describe what the fact finder is as a panel of other administrators throughout the district.
Okay.
Yep.
And then just one more thing on not wording or anything else. Is it, and maybe it's not possible, or maybe it's just not right to do, I don't know, but it seems like a lot of places to go to another policy. Why can't there be, like, when I see that policy, I can just click on it and it takes me to that policy, instead of, like, if I were someone, I need to look all these up, and I'm like, okay, I look at this one, now I got to go back to board docs, so I can click on here to get to another policy.
Yeah.
To me, that just seems like it could be streamlined when it says, look at this other policy. Hey, here's a link to that other policy. Or is it
Not
just,
sure if board docs, does it allow you
Maybe
to
it
link to?
doesn't.
It does, okay.
and I know links change, then
Yeah.
stuff changes and you have to remember to change this spot. I don't know, it just seems like it would be easier for everyone if they wanted to look at things to be able to, when you say, see this policy, I can just click it instead of going, oh, let me go find that one too.
That would be a task to go through all of them and find
But
those
If we start,
places
like,
and link
but if
them.
we started
Sure,
doing it
yeah.
as we had our, site, I
Uh-huh.
don't want to cause.
Yep, I
I
gotcha.
was even thinking if you, no, that was a whole nother thing. Seeing if you did it in Google Docs, it would always be updated, so the link would always be the same, but yeah, I get it.
Gotcha.
And it's not like, you don't have to, I was just curious if there was a way to do it or not, so. Thank you.
Additional comments from the board? All right, I'm going to throw just a few in. To Susan's point on the days, if they're not statutorily defined, if there may be, because we have 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, 8 days. And I know you'd already addressed 5 to 4, et cetera, but maybe we look at why is it only 2 days? Do we need to maybe say 4 days or 3 days if it's not statutorily defined? I was just looking at some consistency across the board.
Well, the consistency, if you change 2 or 3 based on it, like that you round to the nearest number, it would still remain 2 or 3, right? Because
Oh, I'm not
3 days
looking-
4 would be 2.5, therefore you're running up to 3 and
Sure.
3 is 3.
I'm not looking
2
at
and a third,
reducing
2.
it by 80%. I'm just saying, why are some areas 2 days, other areas 3
Yeah.
days? If it's not statutorily defined, maybe we just look at a
I think
consistency
some of
across
those
that.
things are due to the amount of time it takes to do certain things, like get communications out, send letters for people to have appropriate time to review the documentation and get back to us. So some things are pretty easy, like we just have to send you notification with the next time. That's a pretty easy thing for us to do. We do our thing and we send out the notification. But if it requires kind of time for revision or review and back and forth communication, you do want to allow time for, because everyone else has, parents have jobs and
Right.
we've got other things we're doing other than a due process situation. And so,
I was thinking more, is there a way to just make everything a 4-day or an 8-day to give that consistency? And I realize that creates a bureaucracy that then has a delay that's already automatically built in.
so
But there's nothing saying you can't do faster.
yeah, got your point. So to say why you wouldn't want to necessarily give everything a longer timeline would also be because keep in mind that during this time, a student is suspended
Right.
and they're missing school. And so if everything is just 4 days out regardless, and this is something that could be wrapped up pretty quickly and we could send something and they come back, they say, yeah, we accept it. Kid was a dum-dum and did this thing they shouldn't have done. And boom, we're moving on, then you can move on with your life and get the thing over with and get them in the next most appropriate environment instead of dragging everything along. And especially if you only have because once you get into the appeals process, there are certain things that have to happen by their own timelines. And so the longer you drag out other processes, you could find yourself in spots where you're not providing FAPE anymore because you're mired in the muddy waters of the red tape like you talked about.
Okay.
I was just gonna say that, having the 8 days makes sense with the 2, because it used to be 2 weeks. But I don't see any reason to change the 3 days or the 2 days in any other way, just because we don't want to drag this on. We are dealing with the life of a student. And if, all the fact finding and everything else can be taken care of in, an efficient manner so that we can make sure that student either is or isn't back in school in whatever manner that is going to be determined, it should be sooner rather than later. So I don't see any reason to push those dates or those numbers any larger.
Really, the only thing that takes that time, because I'm responsible for setting these up, is getting the fact finding team put together, because I got to contact administrators, find 3 administrators, and I got to find a day that works for the administrators and for the parents. The other stuff happens, because exactly like CJ said, we just had one of these, and I told the dad, I will contact you the minute the decision's made after, so it was within a day, I contacted him. Most of those things happen like that, but the setting it up takes some time. And there could be situations where it is a more controversial situation and he needs to take some extra time, but we try to hammer him out as quick as we can, because I want that kid to get, most of the time they end up in an NDA for every day that we on this time of year, that gets shrunk down to their time to complete those classes. So we hustle as much as we can to get these things through.
Thanks, Paul. That was what I was hoping to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, it's a very rare occasion that you're hitting the 3-day every time and the 5-day and the 8-day, like typically they happen a lot faster than that.
Okay. On JDFD, and this again kind of a little bit goes back to Susan's point. We have on here for definitions, see policy JDFG. I realize it extends the policy, but it may be more convenient and conducive to our constituents to be able to have all of the definitions in there.
Just have definitions in both. Is that
Yeah.
what you're getting at?
And that way they're not bouncing back and forth between them.
Yeah.
You indicated a difference between significant suspension under NRS versus long-term suspension. Is that something that needs to be defined?
Well, in this one, I would say no, because there is nothing about, like, we don't use the term significant suspension. We have suspensions and we have long-term suspensions.
Okay.
And we consider a long-term suspension just to be anything beyond 2 weeks of school, and anything below that, we do not offer, there's no due process, for that one. It's only when you get into the long-term suspensions, expulsions, or permanent expulsions. The significant suspension term is only relevant to appeals because some great people in cities far away from here decided to create that term and make it into an NRS.
Great. Okay. Last thing that I have is statutorily required discipline was struck out of 10, and Jeff kind of mentioned a little bit on that. And I realized that that was struck because it doesn't deal with the appeals process. And I just wanted to make sure that that language was still covered in JDFG, where it does indicate that the Board of Trustees in cases of permanent expulsion, do we need to add or require or statutorily required discipline? I guess what I'm looking at is what else is statutorily defined
What discipline is statutorily defined?
that may need to, because if we're taking it out of the one policy, we're not adding it back into the new policy. So is that,
Well, that part, so here where it says, yeah.
right?
So it talks about those situations in the JDFG, I believe.
And so those appeals in section 6 are, okay,
Okay.
all right. So then let's finish up with JDFD. Any further discussion or direction back to staff for JDFD?
I'd just like a general question. So walk me through this because I'm trying to understand this. And if I'm having an issue with it, I know other folks might. So basically we're taking where the board was involved in these or should have been involved, or I don't know, whatever, but the suspensions, and it's essentially leaving it with the superintendent and or their designee, and leaving the board to only then be involved if there is if there's an appeal, and only for a permanent expulsion, correct? Is that what I'm reading these in general? Anything else is going to be left to the superintendent and or their designee?
That was a long question, and I think the answer is yes.
That's exactly what I was going to address.
That's what I'm saying. So by NRS, we're named, and that's fine. We're named as well as the superintendent and or the board's designee. We're named in a lot of this. And so I just want to make sure that as we remove ourselves from it, I'm not saying I want to be part of, this process per se, but I just want to make sure the board is comfortable with us being removed from those other portions as we move forward. Not to say you can't.
Yeah.
And I understand it makes it cumbersome for your job if we were to say, oh yeah, we definitely want to be part of that. 3 days, let's put a board meeting together, the due process, all the stuff that's in there. So I'm not saying I necessarily want to, I just want to make sure I understand that that's where we're leaving this.
Right. So if I can, let me just answer that this way is there are a lot of NRSs that say, a lot that say the board or their designee, or so the board or the state charter authority. It's like a long clause that they use in so many different ones. And basically what we view the assignment of discipline as day-to-day operations of the employees of the Elko County School District and not a job of the school board.
Mhm.
When they say the school board,
Mhm.
it most often does not mean the school board. It means the school board or who they authorize. And so we are suggesting that the assignment of school discipline not have anything to do with the school board, because it is not appropriate for the school board to be assigning discipline. That is for an administrator to do, and then we have due process within our own district level administrators to handle reviewing those. Now, in certain situations where a board, essentially where it was in here before already, it didn't say the word appeal, but that's essentially what it was, right? We would do our internal processes and then it would be presented to you for review. And that's basically what it still does, is the decision is made at our levels through the due process, and where an appeal would have made it to the board in the first place is now just listed under the appeal side of things. But I am suggesting pretty directly that I don't think that the board either wants to or needs to be involved in the assignment of discipline or the due process part of that. In the most severe situations where someone is getting permanently expelled from a school district, that would be something that I think a board should definitely be able to weigh in on if we needed to get to that point.
So I'm just going to say this just because, and I totally respect your opinion, but I disagree that people out there don't think that the board should have anything to deal with it. I get what you're saying. I don't want to be part of the initial disclosure or the initial investigation into this. Like, that's how it is. And that's what the NRS actually states, is that we would have to use whatever you use. But I think that people still want us to be a part of how this is going. There needs to be some sort of stopgap so that we don't have an organization. Again, I don't mean to imply that your organization would do this, but at some point, you might be sitting in that chair. And at some point, I might not be sitting in this chair. But there could be a point where we have an organization that is just doing whatever, and that is why we have to work together. And so I think that's why the NRS is stated that way. So that's why I'm asking the board per se. I get where you're coming from, totally do. I don't want to be there unless I absolutely have to. I don't want to be part of this process unless we absolutely need to. But I want to make sure the board understands that over the course of the 3 years I've been here, we have relieved ourselves of some of these duties, and this would be one more of those duties that we've relieved towards the superintendent. I have been an advocate for some of those as well. And so it's not that I'm not an advocate. I just want to make sure that they understand at the higher level that we are leaving the majority of this to the superintendent or their designee, with the broad term of designee. And then at some point, we will only be a part of the appeals process at the end. Just so everyone makes sure.
Yes, no, you're correct. I'll give you just like something to chew on. According to what's written here, and if you were to be involved in every due process that has to do with statutorily required things within the last 3 to 4 weeks, we would have had to call 3 to 4 special board meetings for you to be involved in a due process for those students. I mean, everybody doesn't know about everything that's going on.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But
it specifically statutory says that we don't need to be
right. So I mean, like here, it's according to this, in all cases, it would be if we went the route that, like, I think you're trying to say, in all cases, it's what it says, requiring statutorily or involving statutorily required discipline. So that would, like I said, in just the last few weeks, in order to meet our timelines that are in other policies and in our restorative behavior plan, we would have had 3 to 4 special meetings for those.
So the other thing I guess I'm not portraying is that also means that there's all, and then there's only permanent, and then there's a scale in between all of that. And so I'm just making sure that there's no place else that the board doesn't want to be part of, again, with consequences associated with that.
Yeah, so
I get your pushback on it.
I guess what I'm saying is, if that's just the case for the statutorily required ones, go ahead and imagine how many there are in between the statutorily required and 8 days. Like, there's a lot, and we have 50 to 60 administrators who have a method of how we process those. And so to remove that off of their responsibilities and to move it to yours, I just envision it being really complicated,
Very cumbersome, very complicated, very involved. And so I understand that.
unmanageable, I would say.
And then and then basically what I'm saying is, are we okay with that? That's all I'm asking. So, because nobody wants it, we just continue to flop over responsibilities over the course of 3 years. Again, some I've advocated for. And so before we do that with another one, I just want to make sure everyone knows what we're doing. So not necessarily for the fact that it's uncomfortable for us, but just for the fact that, is this what we want to do? And that's fine if it is.
Thank you, Josh. On the statutorily imposed discipline that you mentioned, CJ, you said 3 to 4 in the past 3 to 4 weeks. This part that was removed from policy JDFD originally had indicated, if I'm reading this right, had originally indicated only those statutorily imposed disciplines defined in policy JDD. Policy JDD appears to no longer exist. And so that may be something that comes back to the board on, here are the statutorily imposed disciplines that we have to do. Which of these do you want to be involved in? Because I hear your point. It would prevent our students from being able to have a more timely return to school, because at a very minimum, it takes 3 days to call a special meeting. So 3 business days. So that immediately adds 3 days to everything else. However, I agree with Josh in that if we continue as a board to delegate away our responsibilities, then the only option left is for the constituents to get ticked off at us and for us to hold you accountable with, discipline on your end. But yet, if we've given you the authority to do that, how do we, so it's.
The way this was enacted before, and again, I don't have much more to say other than I don't think you need to be involved in this process. The length to which you have been involved in this process is decisions are made, those things are put in a consent agenda to tell you about what things are done, and you guys have said move to approve the consent agenda. That is the element that you are removing from this, is that you would approve those. I would still make you aware of them. At the very end, it says a complete copy of the decision must be provided to the board. So it's still going to be provided to you. That's still part of the policy. You're essentially doing the same thing. That's what I've tried to say from the beginning of this, is this doesn't reflect a change in practice almost at all.
And I hear you. I don't think that policy JDFD, as it's currently defined, allows the board to enter into the discipline side of things. You guys are still doing the discipline. It's just the appeals part that's on our end. And so I don't see that as discipline. I see that as judicial. And so that I'm not arguing with at all. Yeah, continue doing the discipline. What I'm hearing from Josh, and maybe we're going to hear that from Jeff later, is the removal of when it comes back before the board. I don't see that as being discipline of, yep, suspend them, yep, expel them, whatever it may be. It's that appeals portion. And that's all I was asking of. You had indicated that statutorily defined discipline, again, we're not getting involved in the discipline, we're getting involved in the notice of that. I'm just wondering how many of those are there, and how do we find that medium to say, okay, this is something that we don't need to get into an appeals side of that. You handle the appeals, or the principal handles the appeal, or the fact finder handles the appeal. Mm-hmm. Where do we as the board come in? And I think that's, if I'm hearing right, I think that's also what Josh is saying, is we don't want to give away that authority to hear the appeal when it's something that the community wants us to hear. So I don't know how else to address that on this one yet.
Sure.
So I think let's move on to the next one, hear what Jeff has to say, and then we'll come, so I'm going to pause policy or action item or agenda item 2.05, I think we're on 2.04. And we'll go on to 2.05 and then come back. So with that, 2.05, Jeff, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Well, if needed, section 6 there is what deals with the appeals process and with the board. And the only thing that I had issue with there is that I feel like parents should have the right to appeal, or students should have the right to appeal. And that one leaves us with only cases of permanent expulsion. The right to appeal, anything less than a whole calendar year would be, they wouldn't be able to talk to us. And I'd like to see, of course, suspension stay there under A, but move any expulsion down to B. And basically what that would do is make any appeal that's up to 1 day less than a semester would be handled by superintendent or designee, but anything a semester or more, the parent or that person would have the right to appeal to the school board. And I think you'd probably find if we look back on the instances of that occurring, they're going to be few and far between, but it still does give that person the parent, the ability to come and talk to us if they really feel, and if it's something that significant. So that would be my suggestion, would be to move to move expulsion down to B and have A just be superintendent or designee in cases of a suspension, or B, the board of trustees in case of expulsion or permanent expulsion.
So the expulsion or permanent, so the incidents I talked about before that you would have 3 or 4 in the last 3 to 4 weeks, those would all fall under the expulsion category.
Did they appeal them?
We're not there yet.
Right. That's
On some of them. Sorry, yes. Yeah, in certain cases, there have already been appeals processes that have gone through. And so what I'm saying is there's going to be, in almost all of those cases, we have statutorily required discipline. So we're taking something that the law says we have to give discipline for, and you guys want to hear appeals for the things that have to be done for sure.
if it's more than a significant amount of time, which I would consider semester to be enough that if somebody.
Statutorily, Jeff. I'm telling you, we're doing stuff that the law requires us to
Understand.
do.
And
Kid doesn't actually get suspended for a semester, or he gets suspended for a minimum of a year. It's just the law says that. And the due process hearing, it's the policy says they can come in and they can see either the kid didn't do what we said they did, or we didn't follow the process.
Well, then it should be pretty easy for us, but it still gives the parent or student that opportunity to appeal to the school board.
Just letting you know it happens a lot.
And I guess, because I agree with Jeff, and I realize that that's a lot. I guess my next concern would be, as a parent of a student in the district, if we're expelling that many kids, then either one, the statute is stupid and they're getting suspended or expelled for things that are minor, or two, we have a serious issue in the schools. And if we do, does that mean that it's an administrative issue, a safety issue, a behavioral issue? I think that if there are that many issues where we're expelling that many kids, yeah, I think the community may want to know what's going on. And right now, we don't know what's going on. We know that, yep, there was an issue. It was handled appropriately. We trust that it was done. But if in 3 to 4 weeks, we've had 3 to 4 expulsions, that to me seems extreme. Now, maybe it's because we haven't heard about it previously in this manner. That's just like, whoa. I don't know. I don't have a word other than whoa.
I mean, just take a look at what is statutorily required, and I don't think there's anything on there, almost anything on there that you're going to say, wow, that's extreme that we're expelling or what we used to call long-term suspending. Like those are, what we find on the other end is backlash from people about, I can't believe that this student is still in school. Like, that's what you hear from people. And so on one hand, we're saying, you know, people want those things done to keep their kids safe. And on the other hand, you're saying we need to make sure we are giving people the opportunity to appeal things that are almost universally recognized as dangerous and hazardous to everybody's health and safety.
So is this all part of the progressive discipline where they have in statute, like this is what happens if you, like, give an
Yes.
example? Without using names or whatever,
Sure.
maybe that would help.
An example would be someone was found with a firearm in their possession on a school campus. Documented with a firearm on campus. What you're saying is,
And they appealed it?
oh yeah,
I'd like to say it'd be easy for us.
Well, I just want to say that if that policy is that we get notified, I haven't been notified of anything. Like, there's no notification. Your example was that we put it on the thing. So maybe we would go, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. We'll say, yeah, this is, again, you're saying that we've heard these things. And that we have the report, that we're going to get the report. Like, I don't have any of those reports. I don't, not that I necessarily need them for anything other than the notification of, but like, I don't have them. So I don't, like, they were on a consent agenda. I don't remember seeing them on a consent agenda. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, people expect us to be the check in the machine. And so that's why I'm even bringing these up, is because we are deferring our check to those I currently trust. But again, policy in and of itself is tough to change, or policy in and of itself has consequences that go into the future. And so I'm trying to make sure that if we're going to defer that we have the check that everybody wants us to have. That's why people elect us to this position, is so that we can be the check, not that any person individually right now is doing it. You guys have been doing this a long time. I'm sure you're doing a fantastic job. You're doing what you need to do. I don't want to infer that at all. But if it's that we get this, unless somebody else is getting them and it's not being passed on, I don't have any of that information. And so that leads me to believe that maybe we need to be that check still. And that's why I'm saying that.
the stuff you would have seen is not going to have all the details. It's not going to have full investigations. It's going to be a notice of so-and-so has been suspended. They're very brief notices. They're not. And I can check to see if we've been doing that or not. But that, I guess what I'm saying is what the previous policy says is essentially that would come through and you'd be aware of it, but not that you would be involved in the actual processes.
So, Mr. Chair, can I jump in here?
Please.
So I have sat on this board for a while, and I have been part of, I think, 1, maybe 2 appeals. That's it. I've been here for a long time. I don't think anyone in this room was even in the room when that took place. And I feel like our job as a board is to hire a superintendent that we put to work. If we feel like the superintendent is not doing a great job with discipline, if we feel like our superintendent isn't hiring administrators or principals that aren't doing a great job taking care of these things, then our job as a board is to reflect that in our evaluation. But I can tell you, we don't want to get into the weeds of being involved in every item of discipline for a student. Our job is big picture. We're not individually dealing with each student every day. That is my thought. I don't think we can call a special meeting every week to be hearing and seeing, all this information about a single student. I think our job is to make sure, regardless of who sits in the superintendent's chair, that they are doing their job. And if we don't see that as a good job, that's reflected in the evaluation. I don't think we get into the weeds of student discipline. I do think it's a good thing for the board to see something if it's permanent expulsion, because obviously we want to try to keep kids in school. There are some kids who we don't want in our schools. And I know that doesn't sound like a nice thing to say, but there are kids who have done things that they need to be somewhere else for the safety of the people on their campus, for the safety of their teachers, for the safety of their fellow students, whatever that is. We would love to say that would never happen. We don't want that to happen in Elko County. It happens. So I see that in policy JDFG, where it talks about the school board or the board of trustees seeing these appeals in a case of a permanent expulsion. I think that's a good time for that to come before the board. But anything prior to that, we expect our administrators to do their job. And I think they're doing their job. I don't think we want to get the board down in the weeds. That's my opinion.
And I can't say I do agree with what you said. My only concern is how do we know he's doing a good job with discipline if we don't data? And I'm not saying I need to know the exact person had this, but like how many suspensions do we have? Is there trouble in our appeal? Like, I agree.
Yeah, and that's we could request a report. How many significant suspensions or expulsions are we seeing every month? But
because I think that would tell us
Yeah.
something, not that you're not doing the discipline, but hey, we have a real problem because blah, 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 whatever it is, X, Y, and Z. That is my only, I do agree with you. I don't want to manage and be in charge of that part.
We have a quarterly report that includes all of that information that goes to Department of Ed.
That we do get that, or you give one? I'm sorry.
We turn it into the Nevada Department of Ed quarterly. And our principals report on those things.
Copy of what you send.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a good place to start, is we get a copy of that. And then if we look at things and say, wow, maybe we need to be doing something different, then as a board, we can look at different policies, different whatever. But maybe we start there instead of, I understand the perspective of wanting to, we want to keep kids in school if at all possible, right? Like we want to do that. And all of us are here because we care about kids. But I think finding out the information is probably a good place to start, but not being involved in the process unless we're like, hey, this is terrible. Let's totally change things up. But let's have some information. Susan's always a data person. And we get that information, great. Then let's move from there.
So that was maybe I finally got feedback. So one of the additions was that data would be presented to you guys, given you guys, I don't know, I don't think we throw it up on the board, but it's part of something that we give you guys in a meeting. And I think I said it was the first meeting in July, I can't remember exactly, but then you guys would get that data and it shows how many of each type of suspension we had. And this was tied more to the racial equity part of it that they passed in the last legislation. This was a new report that we had to do, but I wrote that into the policy that, they're not the policy, but our restorative justice plan, that after we get that data, it's presented to you guys and you can take a look at it. So that would be this summer. I think we submitted last year, we had to have it into Bighorn in the end of June. And so it was either the first meeting in July or the first meeting in August. So we'd have that data for you guys.
And I'm gonna be a little defensive right now, but but I know it's semantics, Matt, but you said something before that says we have a problem in our schools. If you think a lot of those things are happening, it's not a problem in our schools, it's a problem in our homes and in our community. Because we don't distribute guns at the front office, we don't distribute drugs at the front office, we don't set up assaults through our scheduling software. Those are things that children are bringing into, or we don't have a gun problem in our schools. We have a gun problem in our community. We don't have a drug problem in our schools. We have a drug problem in our community. And those things are being brought into our schools.
And I
so
agree with
that's that. I know you didn't mean it like that we're the problem. Our schools are not the problem.
Right. But with that said, if it's not being addressed until the point that it gets to expulsion, that is a problem in our schools. And that is the discipline that you guys need to handle and we should stay out of. But if our community doesn't know what's going on, I don't want to create a nanny state or a public shaming. But at the same time, maybe if our community realized, hey, every week the school board has to meet for an appeal on another drug issue. Well, frickin', pardon my language, maybe the community would finally pull their heads out and start working together as a community to address the issues that our teachers and that our staff have to deal with. But more importantly, that put our students at risk. Because as a community, we need to do this. I've advocated every chance I get on home rule. If we want to be able to control what's going on in our community, we need to be able to show that we can control what's going on in our community. And we can't do that if the community doesn't realize that there is an issue. I'm hopeful that this is just a blip on the matrix and 3 out of 3 or 4 incidences in the last 3 or 4 weeks is just a really high point. But if we're seeing this on a weekly basis, maybe we do need the community to recognize this is a serious problem. As a community, we need to address it. Our students, our staff, our teachers shouldn't deal with this alone. We need to deal with it as a community. Sorry, I got a bit hot there. So I agree with what you're saying. It is not a school problem as long as we're dealing with it at the school issue, or at the school level. It is a community problem and our community needs to know about it.
And to the point of due process in those situations, like all of the ones we're talking about, those aren't us, like there is no addressing it in the schools before it gets to that point, right? Because they're almost all single incident required, statutorily required things. So it's like someone could be a model citizen and then they do one stupid thing and it's like there was nothing to address before that. They were coming to school under the radar, everything was fine, and then this thing happened. There's not, with those situations, there's nothing to address until there's something to address. It's not like that there are certain, for example, expulsions with someone who'd be called like a habitual discipline problem. So that if that's someone who got in, they got in 4 fights or something, well, yeah, then there's a lot of things you do building up to that. Like we suspended, we did this behavior plan, we did this counseling, there would be a ton of steps that would happen in that situation before it got to the point where they're considered a habitual discipline problem, which results in a longer term suspension or expulsion. You're right. There are situations like that if you got to that point, there should have been a lot of stuff done and we'd be able to show all the documentation of how that stuff got done. The stuff I'm talking about is stuff that it's a one-time, a lot of them are just one-time things, but I mean, they're one-time things that we can't have a lot of latitude and allowance for.
So, go ahead, sir.
I'm just gonna kind of jump back to try and get us on track here, okay? We're not talking about special meetings. We're not talking about any of this. If you look at 6, okay, the first line of that, appeals should be filed with, scheduled, conducted, and ruled upon by, and then it lists the group depending on the infraction. There's nothing there, and then in 7, it talks about it needs to be addressed within 30 days. There's nothing that says we need to have a special meeting or all get called out of work to come decide on this. We can do this before or after a meeting very simply, okay? What I'm talking about is just moving that threshold to a semester or more. That's really the semantics that we're arguing about here, or going with, as it's written here, permanent expulsion, sorry, meaning 1 year or more. I'm just asking for 6 months because I think anything a semester or longer certainly affects somebody's ability to graduate to, you're looking probably at another year of school if you miss a semester. And I just feel like the parents or the kids should have that right to appeal to the school board. It doesn't mean we have to have a hearing and a whole Judge Judy show in here. We can have a simple report from you that says, yes, this person violated NRS, which requires this, this, and this. And we go, yep, they did. Case closed. And that can be the end of it. And there's nothing in here in these this policy that we have that says other than that. So we don't need special meetings. We don't need, it's not going to be this huge tax of time on us.
How do you,
The only time we would go to NNDA school is if it's a permanent expulsion. In every case where we do what we call long-term suspension, those kids get to enroll in NNDA. So I was trying to think, and I don't.
I think we can agree, though, it can potentially affect their graduation.
Potentially.
So.
but Jeff, how do you call this an appeal then? Because an appeal to me is you have writing, you get facts, you have people come in, like whatever, so.
An appeal
writing,
by-
That's not really an appeal,
By definition is, you're appealing, you're asking someone to look at it.
but
And so,
In 7, it
The
does
appeal
dictate what it
process
is,
is
though.
different.
That you would have to sit down and listen to no more than 15 minutes per side, listening to the student argument followed by the administration
I don't know
argument.
why it would fall into like, yeah, I don't agree with it, I guess, so.
So if I could just make a clarification, so on 6, Jeff,
Yeah.
you'd almost be suggesting that there be like a third, like a third category that delineates. Because right now we have significant suspensions or expulsions.
just move expulsion down to B.
You would want all expulsions.
And just, we're kind of talking about this without data too.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna rest on that
Yeah.
and just ask formally for the data for last school year. How many students did we have that had a significant suspension? How many did we have that had an expulsion? And how many did we have that had a permanent expulsion? And of those, how many of them appealed? And I think that'll get us a number for us to understand what we're dealing with. And until I hear that, I really don't want to argue it anymore.
Sure, yeah. So I have a couple of those numbers off the top of my head, but I don't have the one that probably matters the most in this conversation. I don't think we had any permanent expulsions last year. We had well over 1,000 significant suspensions last year.
Yeah.
And then as far as expulsions, I
More
don't
than
know
a
that number.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna kind of piggyback on what I said. I fully agree with Teresa on here. I don't want to be part of this any more than we have to be. And I do think that our constituents deserve a chance to appeal as been outlined in NRS. But again, I don't think that we need to be jumping into the weeds more than we already have been. I think my biggest issue comes that I'm supposed to have reports in front of me that I don't have. But I don't have data to track that. And so I think that in order to put that together, I think that we need to get those together and get that data together so that we have a good idea of what we're looking at. So, but at the end of the day, my comment was not to create confusion or try and put myself in a position of authority within the district. That's not what I was trying to do. I'm just trying to make sure that we understand what we're giving away, A, and B, how this is a balance act between those in the district that work here and the board, and how we need to work together so that we can make proper decisions. So with that, yes, I'm with Jeff. I rest on this. I just need some more information.
Thank you. Further discussion? All right, there's no action on either 2.04 or 2.05. We've certainly given staff a lot to be able to work with. Before I move on to 2.06, CJ, do you need more time to compile or compose any notes?
Nope.
Okay.
I think I got what I need.
All right. 2.06 is receipt of central office department updates. We'll start with Mr. Stalkey. Come on back, Matt.
So the projects that we have going on right now are the food science building. Footings have been poured. Building should be, because it's a prefab building, should be showing up on Monday. And then some light remodel work has started in the modulars. Also, we have been looking at design for costs for new roofs for Old Central and Wells High School gym. Old Central, the roof has completely failed. There's water pouring in. I don't want to lose the building, so we get a cost on that and move forward on that. Would be great. The gym at Wells High School is a barrel roof that's, I think it's 35 years old, and it's leaking in certain spots, but we kind of just want to get a cost on that and get some design going to move forward on that. The Carlin fire alarm project is complete. We have a few things, O&Ms, some training, couple extra parts, but the system's up and running. It turned out really good. So that's been great. And then the Flagview Auxiliary Gym project has started. It's just been kind of slow with the weather, but they're moving forward. They were there today and kind of tackling everything. So hopefully, I don't have a update on timelines, but I don't think it's going to take a ton of time to get that project completed. School safety projects. We have completed Adobe Middle School, Elko High School, Spring Creek High School, Spring Creek Middle, Southside Elementary, and then Wells Combined is just kind of finishing up right now. It should be done by the end of the year. And then moving forward with the school safety projects, talking to Jeff Bowers with Innovative Communication, who's doing all the work. They're doing each school about 2 months per school. So we're trying to get this next year, not fiscal year, but the year. We'll try to get Carlin Combined done, Flagview Intermediate, Northside Elementary. Their system went down. They kind of had a standalone system that wasn't supported by the school district or, supported by our stuff. So kind of bumped them in there a little bit. And then West Wendover High School, West Wendover Middle School, and then Jackpot Combined.
Matt, on those ones there, before you move further, would then the rest of the schools be completed FY26?
It looks like that. They have some dedicated people, and then they might even have some people they can pull from Reno to kind of move forward, all this process, right? So hopefully.
Okay.
It would be great if they could get some guys down here, but we're kind of in a remote location, and they had a guy move down here, and he's been fantastic. So yeah, we're pretty happy with the schedule that they've been doing. So
great, thank you.
And then the big thing, Hawaii. So we've scaled back the project to the school and a little bit of the school site. So that's the playgrounds and some parking lots to make sure we can build that for $64.5 million, right? So I think with that, we would like to get the revised scope of work out probably like December 5th. Let the contractors look at that, and then we would probably bid in the middle of January.
So regarding that, you're saying that they've dropped like the football field and that kind of stuff, for instance, is gone.
Yes.
Is there any modifications to the school itself?
No. So school itself, for our standards, we're keeping the school itself. We've kind of, like you said, we've cut the football field track out. CTE, bus barn area, kind of at the bottom of the project out.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can secure some more funding. But
And there's that second building, or was that the CTE section?
yeah, CTE.
And then how about the extra classrooms they were looking for on the
So I
elementary
included
side?
that in the base bid.
That did include in the base?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's kind of the 2 classrooms in the elementary school portion to be extended out. So if they ever had an influx, they could.
Yeah, that was something she was really,
Yeah, so we include that in the base bid.
really
Yeah,
adamant
so
about
that's-
looking for.
That's going forward.
Didn't want to lose that.
No, that's super important.
Can I go back just, and maybe you've said this before and I just don't remember. What's the old central building used for anyway?
Old Central Building would be, it's kind of used for my department, kind of facilities and stuff like that. We kind of have parts and shop and different things in that, but I would really, I think, hate to lose a building,
Okay,
you know,
that's
so.
why I was wondering,
Yeah,
like. if-
I don't think I think the grand scheme of Old Central would be to move myself and my department over there. If we could do that, and then free up some space here at Central for, you know, expansion and, you know, stuff we need more people here and.
Matt,
different
sorry,
stuff.
let me pause you for a minute.
Yeah, we can't lose Old Central, we'll lose Elko High for internet access.
Oh.
We have servers and stuff over there, we can't lose them.
It's been so long since I've been in that building. I'm like, what's in it anyway? So.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
Like, we don't want to lose internet for Elko High. They would hurt me. I'm like, yeah.
And I think if we lost a building like that, the remediation for a building to improve the grounds is a lot of money. So we really don't want to have to go through that process, right? So if we could, you know, get a new roof on and then slowly, if, you know, we get some funds, start, you know, maybe that's our department. We start remodeling some of that stuff. It wouldn't take much. And then we can move over there and free up some space here. So.
Additional comments or questions for Matt? Okay, Matt, when it goes on a Waihe, when it goes back out to the contractors in December, that's just to say, here's what we're looking at. We
So-
want you to have some time to be able to ask us questions before it's bid. Why are we sending it to the contractors and how do we choose which contractors it goes to?
We don't choose that. So Matt, what we would do, we're gonna have a new scope of work, of course, right? You know, because we've scaled everything down. So those plans would go out to.
The public.
Yeah, the public, right? And then from there, I want to give them time. It's not like you can just do that overnight. So it's giving them to the middle of January to review those plans, come up with a number, because there's going to be a bunch of new contractors that are going to bid on this, which is going to be fantastic. And I think giving them, you know, I'm saying middle of January, but if we get some responses back that they need another week or another 2 weeks or something, but I would really like this to go out before the legislature comes in, so we kind of have a hard number and we can tell them, hey, this project's moving forward. It's whatever X number it is, and we can, we're building school. Because, you know, at the end of the day, that's what's going to happen.
And that's under the traditional design bid build
Yes.
method that you're
Yeah.
looking at.
Yep.
And what happens if the board says we don't want that? What if we say we want construction manager at risk because we've already gone down this path and it failed?
I think we're looking at another year of delay to go that route. So I don't think that would be feasible through the legislature to postpone this another year. I think we've gone through this whole process for what, 2 years? And this is a process we're locked into, we've chosen, and not we chose, that we're locked into, and we need to move forward to get this project completed with the funds that we have. And then if we have to phase out CTE, track. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Okay. I'm throwing a curveball at you, and I mentioned briefly to CJ last week, but I've not followed up with him at a meeting soon. Can you give us an update on the Independence Valley school housing situation?
Yes.
Unless you have one prepared to be able to give now.
No, yeah. So we've talked to a couple local contractors because that building's been probably vacant for 12 to 15 years. I'm not exactly sure on the date, right? So I have a contractor coming out next week to scope and inspect the sewer system because we don't know if we need to install a new septic tank or sewer line. I believe the water line is okay and intact. The building itself that a teacher could move into is completely destroyed, right? So I've contacted a couple manufactured home companies and not looking at anything big, just a single wide, maybe 2-bedroom, 2-bath. Size we'll kind of figure out maybe together. So that's anywhere between $60,000 and $100,000. So we're just kind of moving forward with that whole process. But yes, up to you guys, what you guys would like to see. I would say, let's just say moving costs, the building, let's just say $120,000 to get a building there. We're gonna have to do a foundation. If we don't have to do any utilities, but I think we'll have to do a little bit. So we're looking at maybe $20,000 to say $50,000. So we're looking at maybe $170,000 top to put a facility in there for a teacher. So.
Thank you. And that's not on our currently scoped out on our plan, correct?
No, the CIP, that was developed kind of before we knew we were going to be in this situation. So the loss of the previous teacher we had there was somewhat sudden. And so we were happy to even find someone who was able to willing and able to jump in when they did. We're really grateful for that. But yeah, the person who's been doing it up to this point is local to that area. And so we just haven't had to, hence why it went vacant for so long. But yeah, that was not part of our CIP for this year.
Okay. So that could be a capital project that could be covered under the existing pay-as-you-go.
Correct.
Sure. Yeah,
Yes.
it would almost surely have to be
Yes.
covered by the pay-as-you-go.
Just want to make sure that, because it's not technically an educational building. And that's my concern, is that it's residential.
I see what you're saying.
It's for educational purposes, but
I think it's because it's our property.
Yes.
It's probably okay to do
Okay.
that. Yeah.
I
That's a great question.
contract
Something definitely worth.
legal but I think we've kind of went down this path with Rich, and I think even basic stuff like forklifts or different things like that could become kind of paid as you go. But Rich would probably have to need to look into that a little bit just to make sure. So
the current instructor is driving from Wells?
I think Elko.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is that from Elko? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Sorry, I had one more regarding Hawaii.
Yeah, no problem.
This additional design stuff where we're eliminating stuff, what, if any, cost is involved with that?
So it's not really a redesign. The land group who does the site work, they will probably bill us for pulling back some of that stuff and re-putting that back out to bid. But I think that would be about it.
Other than that, like as far as the actual.
We're not doing any engineering, architectural. It's just kind of pulling the site back.
Pulling a sheet out of the notebook.
And they're doing work, so I think the contractor needs to be paid for that type of work. because it's not their fault that the project came in or, was over cost or whatever it was, right? So I think that's.
I'm just curious if we're paying the architect anymore based on
No.
what we've already paid for this design that came in way over.
No, it's, I wouldn't say it came in way over. I think just this.
Well, would have had they have submitted.
Sure. No, it's kind of site work is what's going to be some cost.
Yeah.
So it's the site work engineering to redo some plans to scale everything back to put it back out to bid.
All right.
So I'm sitting here thinking, it didn't occur to me when you had said it. So the CTE building that was there, that's gone, correct?
Correct.
How do we rotate CTE back into the program, into this building that we have now?
So I don't think we can rotate it back into the building that we have now. I think there's some definitely some funding sources that will happen through the state. I think getting numbers on this, I think we're gonna do about 10 different bid alternates. So we have prices for a lot of this stuff moving forward.
Okay.
And then we can,
Figure out
the
where that's gonna
legislature
be.
doesn't meet until what, February?
Yeah.
And then we can, I know Ken has Dr. Higbee has gone to legislature. There's a lot of funding there. It's there ready for us. I think just providing that information, what the cost is, and then we can move forward from there.
For sure, I just don't want to get lost, that's all. CTE is important.
The whole campus. is
For sure.
You
The
know,
whole
so
project.
I think
It's
the
been
whole
a-
campus we want to
Been a
provide.
deal for sure, so.
And
Okay.
yeah.
No, I was just asking because I was
Yeah.
like, well, it's easy to erase it, but where do we put it back in,
Yeah.
right?
So just to speak to not only CT building, but like you said, everything else. Basically, the scope of what we're talking about as far as the 64.5 million that we have available to us, that's going to be able to pay for this. And we are definitely pursuing other sources of funding for both the CTE part. I know the tribe is still very interested in the athletic component of that site. And so we're definitely going to be pursuing other options to try to still do the entire scope of work. It's just that in order, obviously the most important part is to make sure we have a facility for kids to go to school in. And so we're focusing on that first and foremost with the money that is currently available to us. And we'll continue to find ways to make the other portions happen as well. But
Yeah,
they'll have to be from a different fund because this fund only has what it has. For sure.
Yeah, I kind of foresee this happening over a few phases, right? So, but we're going to get this built, so.
That was literally what I was just gonna ask, is it be safe to say that those things are just moving to phase 2?
Yes, so I think in the grand scheme of everything, I think the different phases would be rebid each phase, whatever funding available we would have, and then we would bid that phase and move forward from there. So we're not relying on the whole thing to be completed. It's just each phase and what's most important to the school district and the tribe. And that way we can move forward together, so.
Thank you. Anything else for Mr. Stolke? Thanks for your time, Matt. Appreciate it. All right, we'll have our Special Services Nursing Department come up. Nurse Shanks. And team.
Nurses always run in groups, so sorry. I brought with me Skylar Basanias and Desiree from Spring Creek Middle School. She's super excited as well. Yeah, oops, sorry. So come here. Slideshow. Cool. And we decided to print out a copy because that's the other thing we always do too. We're data junkies too. When Dr. Higbee asked us to present, we thought we could take this opportunity just to share with you what school nurses have been up to so far this year. It's actually kind of seemed like a long year to me, but it's actually We're not even through the first semester. Know that, I should give this to you. That what we're sharing is really just a snapshot of everything we have going on. When somebody asked me if I had enough slides or information to share with you, I kind of sighed and said I could probably talk all day if I had a captive audience about school nursing. And our ultimate goal here is to keep students healthy, safe, and ready to learn in the classroom. These are some of our overarching goals through the National Association of School Nurses and where we've created our nursing practice framework. I think I presented some of that last time when we talked. And our little pie chart of how school nurses spend their day. Do you want to explain that one?
Sure, I'll go ahead and explain that. A lot of our daily duties come from care coordination, as you can see there with the yellow, managing chronic illness, attending creating IHPs, which are individualized health plans, which are separate than their IEPs or their 504s, but may still be incorporated into there. We do a lot of community and public health, and in our community, we don't have public health entities. So a lot of school-age children health surveillance comes from within the schools. We are also often working on quality improvement, whether that's in our own offices or how can we improve the processes of coming into our offices as well. And then also leadership, working on advocacy for our students with those needs, professional development, and some of additional duties as well.
In our schools right now, we have 18 school nurses and 1 procedure nurse. We calculated up the FTEs of full-time equivalencies for school nurses based off of national standards and recommendations by the student population and the health conditions in our schools. Recommended FTEs are 22 school nurses, so we're a little behind, but we try to manage that through. Some of our schools have 1,400 kids, some of our schools have 350 kids. We are reaching points where each of our schools have processes or medications or procedures that cannot be delegated and require a nurse in a school. And so that part's getting a little tricky to cover and finagle because we can't delegate. That's dictated by the State Board of Nursing of what we can delegate to other staff in the school. Oh, and we are greatly missing. We used to have a strike team that we called it our strike team. It was during the pandemic where we had a team of trained nurses that could go out into the schools at any time, whether there was an infection control problem, sick calls, and we used them for screening teams too. So for our vision, hearing, height, and weight, this team was just trained and ready to go. But those were funded with our ESSER funds through the pandemic, and so we are missing that team. But we digress. Oh, and also on that side too, we have, we're pretty proud of the fact that almost half of our school nurses have their national certification. That's a pretty big deal, really raises the bar for the level of school nursing and the level of services we provide. We have our State Board of Nursing's license, State Board of Education license, and then many of our nurses have their national certification as well, so that's really cool. We have a local nurse on our working force that's a statewide data collector, so that our data from Elko County goes into the national database. Just like you talked about with the legislative stuff, we've done our fair share of presenting that legislation as well. Lots of this data is used to guide local, state, and national student health policy and identify best practices in school health and better understand what the needs are for children in schools. Some of the data we collect just at a local level, these are just our major health concerns where we put out those individual health plans that Skylar talked about, emergency action plans, and delegate, make sure people are trained to handle these situations in schools. when I'm at a school, it feels like there's a lot. When you look at numbers on a slide, I don't know what it looks like to you guys. To me, it doesn't look like a lot, but when I'm in a school and you're working through all these things, it sure feels like a lot, which is fine, but there's a lot of things going on in schools. Our next slide, we just did a quick summary so far from August to November of the illness and injury office visits for all of our schools and the number of referrals that have gone out to that needed, higher medical care than what we provide. So some of those are flights, some of those are just referrals to doctors or what have you. And we've also added the stat of the communication with families. We've started tracking that. And those are where we have to do follow-up or care coordination. Lots of different things. It's just another spot we're tracking. And then we did our vision. We've are almost done with our vision screening. I think going back to keeping kids healthy, safe, and ready to learn. If they can't see or can't hear, we need to know that as soon as we can in the school year so that we can help those. And I think hearing, we haven't had as many referrals for quite a while. We still have some, but with the newborn hearing screening program, you don't see as many hearing referrals as we used to. And then vision, I think every time there's a growth spurt, different things happen. We still have lots of vision referrals. So we get those letters out and follow up and make phone calls. I know the girls were working on it and I was like, ooh, that one's bad. We got to call that parent, right? Let's call today.
Remind me, it's state mandated as to what age or grade they're getting screening for vision or hearing. If it's not, someone preferred for you all. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, you're asking. Yeah.
So basically, it's not that this is every student in the district.
Correct.
It's only a proportion based on what those are, and based on that, vision and hearing may not be duplicate numbers because they're in different ages or grades.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, currently we do vision screening in pre-K, kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 4th, 6th, 8th, and 10th. Sorry, I count with my hands. And hearing, it'd be the pre-K, K, 1, 3, 5, and 7, and 10. And then if there's any problems, so then we hit if either in some special programs or have been referred last year or they're new to the district. So kind of pick up quite a bit there. I had some of our nurses compile some of the work they've been doing in schools to share with you. And I think a lot of them wanted you to know that our processes with mental health and working through mental health awareness, it's estimated that 36% of school health office visits are related to mental health in some way or another. It's just displaying in what's going on. Oftentimes a kiddo will come in with a stomach ache, but what's really happening? Are you, and
With that, we are working to model our electronic health record to the National Association of School Nurses model so that based upon those identified, if we are able to identify between a mental health versus something that is specific to illness, that if that's reported by students, that we are then able to start including that as a data point also.
And then we've had lots of CPR training going on. Most of almost all of our nurses are American Heart Association's instructors for CPR and first aid. They're usually the AED coordinators for the sites as well. We've certified 138 people in Heart Saver, the K-12 regular CPR, and then 14 healthcare provider classes. And then we also have everybody's a Stop the Bleed instructor. That's kind of a fun class, but we've taught a lot of kids and we've been asked to invite it into classrooms to teach Stop the Bleed and some Heart Saver CPR. And it's pretty awesome watching kids work with the CAT tourniquets and teach them the right ways to apply those and alternative methods if necessary. So those are fun classes. I know Adobe Middle School did this one, and then I think Spring Creek Middle School is hoping to expand to do some Stop the Bleed classes there. Liberty Peak and I guess this one's just Liberty Peak. Nurse Mary was teaching lifetime skills, but this is a really cute picture where they were doing Stop the Bleed and training and hands-only CPR. And that doesn't mean that hands-only CPR is better than everything else, just something is better than nothing. And so if you've got kids or members of the community who can do something to save a life until help comes, it's pretty awesome. So I think they had a good time and learned a lot in that class. November was also Diabetes Awareness Month. And Nurse Mary at Northside, they did, I think the whole staff wore different shirts blue shirts, right? Yep. They wore blue for diabetes awareness, and they did a coloring contest. And I think those are some of their examples of their winners for their coloring contest for diabetes awareness. Liberty Peak Elementary and Mountain View also did some stuff and coloring contests for diabetes awareness. So looks like they did a lot of work and kids and staff had fun with it. Out at Sage Elementary, Renee Montgomery's the nurse there, and they do their annual STEM and health fair. So people who are interested in the health science learning and they really push the healthy snacks. And they invited lots of community and industry partners to participate and support their STEM fair. She's always really proud. The whole school gets into it. It's kind of exciting. I know in Wells, Nurse Mariah was working on vape prevention presentations with our SRO and counselors and working through some of that curriculum. And she was doing her maturation lessons and empathy and personal space lessons. And then we missed it. We were hoping that one of our schools that does they have a junior nurse program. We actually made IDs for a junior nurse program, and we were hoping they could come present infection control to you, but well, we'll work on that for another presentation. But it was pretty cute. We do lots of collaboration in the community, whether it's through American Heart Association, other healthcare providers, the ones that some of those kiddos that we refer out and are trying to work on services to get back in school, whether it's Reno, Boise, Primary Children's. We try to collaborate with those to get kids what they need in school. We're always working with the Department of Public and Behavioral Health, a little less since the pandemic got over. Elko County Board of Health, we go to those quarterly meetings. Lots of multidisciplinary team meetings for whatever kids might need. We still work with PACE Coalition, Communities in Schools. We always see the school resource officers and stay in collaboration with them. We work with Safe Schools professionals, and there's lots of dental screening going on right now. That's kind of exciting. Nevada Health Centers has their mobile van going out and doing dental screening and follow-up. So that's a really good program. And then, yeah, I mentioned we want to bring out the junior nurses to you. We also want to tell you that it's cold and flu season, so wash your hands, cover your cough, because it's going around. What else do we have to say?
Well, I deleted our slide on our goals that were coming forward because I was called out to a school, so it was only partially done. But I did want to state that one of the goals that many of our school nurses have had is to implement some health response drills. We have fire drills and we have other drills that we do. And while it's another drill, current statistics are showing that 2 in 50 schools will have a cardiac arrest this year. 2,000 student-age children will die of a cardiac arrest this year. And while I would never take away anything from fires, but when is the last time we had to respond to a burning building with people inside of it? So while that's still there and we still need to practice all of those things, we do believe that cardiac drills would be important to incorporate. So looking at a program called Project Adam.
You know, those other emergency response plans, right? Do you guys have any questions for us?
I had a question about, medication administration. You had said that it's coming cumbersome because they're requiring nurses for it. I'm very, I don't know what our requirements are for those types of things. I'm assuming that when medications come onto a campus, we need to control those and all that stuff. What's our requirement for providing like a nurse to be able to do that?
There are different routes of medication, maybe possibly emergency medications that can be delegated.
And some of those would be medications that are given rectally. Some of those are medications given via G-tube. Some of those are catheterizing procedures. Some of those are insulin administration. And there is some areas in there that within that those things can happen, but it has to be included within a complete individualized health plan with very specific training data points. And then it also is dependent on medication delivery. There's 4 different types of pumps that are FDA approved that all require different manipulation manual input of those numbers. And then versus pens or syringes if we are giving insulin in that.
A lot of it's, diabetes care you can delegate, but you have to be sure that everybody's trained and understands the training. And sometimes that seems like it shouldn't be that big a deal. And then you're doing it and it's like,
For sure.
it is a big deal.
I think the second part of my question is then are we're required to do that then? Or this seems like a lot more than just a Band-Aid. So I'm just trying to figure out.
Oh, it is a lot more
Every
than a
child
Band-Aid.
is
At what point does it become
education.
like a responsibility of the parent to then come pick their child up to have that done then? That's what I'm saying. I don't know.
So
Are we
even like
required
a
under
student
laws?
with diabetes, we can't require their parent to go on a field trip with them. If they want to and they're able and willing to go, they can. If not, we have to provide the nurse for that.
Yeah, so I think it's our responsibility to do our best to provide whatever a free and appropriate education. And then if a student has a health condition or a medical concern or any other condition, we need to provide what they need at school to keep them safe and access the general curriculum.
Okay, I totally understand what you're saying. Like I get that but at what point do we have a hospital in our schools? And that's what I'm saying. I don't know, and that's what I'm asking. So where would I look in order to figure out that requirement then, and it's broad-based verbiage then?
There is, so we have our Department of Education stuff, but then there is also through the Nevada State Board of Nursing, there is decision and summary of, for the practice of school nursing.
Okay.
Which is basically NRS.
That's what I'm saying. Okay. That's where we would go to figure out whether we should provide a dialysis machine or whether we should find.
Now so we might have to provide a treatment.
Ventilator, but not a dialysis machine.
And we don't have to buy the equipment.
I mean, this is what I'm saying. Like you guys are saying we don't have enough nurses. We know we're short throughout the nation. That is a huge, it's a huge expense. I'm not saying we don't want to take care of our students.
Right.
I'm just saying, if we're having to do this, we're having to pinch pennies on everything. The student should get whatever they deem they need for medical care. But at what point do we have to push back and say, we can't do this anymore is what I'm saying.
I guess the question comes down to, does it impede their access to the curriculum?
Okay. Okay, and then, I had one more thing. So you have a lot of data points that you're taking, and there are certain ones. So are there certain ones defined that the state asks for, certain ones that we're just doing locally? Or are all the data points then uploaded and given to the state at that point?
A little bit of both.
Okay. And that's all within our local EHR or those, okay.
Yeah, we do stats. We do data collection on a regular basis.
Okay. I just didn't know where it went, that's all. And so I just was trying to figure out.
Yeah, and all within applying with FERPA and HIPAA compliance.
So the program that's on here that you talked about, that would be where I go to look to find what data points you give to the state?
You would be able to find the data points of the national level from that resource that was given there.
Okay.
And they actually did just come out with new data points, I think, last week for last year's
Okay.
data submission.
It's not that I want an
Share if you want.
individual, that's what I'm asking. I'm just saying, like, if I wanted to see what you're submitting to the state,
Oh, sure.
that's what I was talking about, like, what are those actual data points in itself? Okay, and
Yeah,
so
we can
that's,
we're happy to share.
okay. Fine.
And we share everything, as long as it's not, one student at this school.
Oh, for sure.
Because that would be personally identifiable, so
Yeah.
it's gotta be generalized.
Okay, cool.
But
Thank
yeah,
you. That's
we'd
all.
be happy to share.
Appreciate it.
And that's, and yeah, for those, if anybody did have any additional questions for the stats that were built here, those come from individual stat summary sheets that are from each school and then compiled. So they're broken down at various levels.
Anything else from the board?
I just wanted to say thank you for the information about everything you do at the schools and everything. And I think we're fortunate to even have nurses in schools because I know other states, their districts, they don't have nurses or anything. So appreciate the work.
There's a good infographic on that out too. And it's just the western states that are really bad.
There's different models, I know I hear that a lot. Well, why can't we do what somebody else does? And you probably could. It just changes the level, the quality of care and if you want to keep kids in school or
Yeah, I agree.
there's a lot.
Thank you, ladies. Okay, I'm gonna take the pleasure of the chair and we're gonna take a 10-minute recess because we need to stretch. So we've been here for 2.5 hours and not that your report's gonna be too long, but we're gonna, yeah. So we're gonna, we'll be back at 5 after 8. Dang it. All righty, we'll go ahead and bring the meeting back to order. We are on item 3.01, which is the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion on the consent agenda? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to 4.01. This is the superintendent's report. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Few attachments on there. I'm not going to talk too much about the emergency repair up in the Owyhee steam pipe. But I suppose if you have any questions, I can answer them, but it's an emergency and we need to repair it. So that's what it boils down to. And so those documents are there. We've already, per our policy and per NRS, we are allowed to enact these things for the sake of an emergency. So we've done that, and we got someone coming out real soon, don't we? Come on up.
So there and is starting the process. They're getting materials up there, kind of coming up with a plan for temporary heating and different things like that. So it's steam line and condensate line. It's failed in multiple places, and if we lose that, then we lose heat to the gym.
So anyway, we're moving forward on that. Those documents are there as that's compliance with when we enact some sort of emergency repair. But I'll get to those the other one later. So just a few things to keep you updated on. Last week, Matt Stalkey and I were able to go to the NGM stakeholders fourth quarter meeting and give a little bit of an update on the school violence prevention project, because they did invest $1 million into that for us. And so making sure to report back to our stakeholders about how that's going and give them kind of somewhat similar, a little more elaborate, but Matt gave you a little bit of an update on that in his presentation today as well. And so it was great to be there, and it was a little bit of a safety-minded meeting. And so we fit right in with talking about how we're trying to improve the safety of all our campuses. So that went well. Awesome attendance at Southside. Had an assembly where they implemented a house system, Harry Potter style, and several of us district administrators were adopted into their houses. So I was adopted into the House of Hope, and your HR director was adopted into the House of Honesty. So, and the other ones got something as well. Anyway, it's looking great. They're doing a great job, and that kind of ties into a little bit with some of the work they're doing. They came their efforts in social emotional learning and the Nevada Future of Learning, and so it's kind of adjacent to that. So that was great. That was last week. We've conducted our SPP, our school performance project review sessions with our elementary schools, all of them. Oh, sorry, I take that back. All of our secondary schools and all of our combined schools. And later this week on Thursday, we will have a review of all of our elementary schools. Thanks to Susan for attending those virtually. And Brooke has also been able to, she tuned in on the combined ones. So we appreciate board member attention. And we're, schools obviously have all their own goals that they're working on, but we've been making sure to make special effort to have them be conscious about how they can make sure that board goals are incorporated in. Well, seeing how their goals relate to and can support board goals and support district performance plan goals as well. So trying to find some coherence and alignment among all of our goals and aspirations. Some upcoming meetings. We have a lot of quarterly meetings happen around this time. So tomorrow we have a fourth quarter capital improvement committee meeting. Tomorrow is also the Northern Nevada Leadership Summit that will be hosted by NNRPDP over at the High Tech Center. A lot of our administrators in central office will be attending that, and as well as school leaders and district leaders from across the region. And that is further learning and deepening of knowledge around the science of hope. So we're going to continue to enjoy that opportunity. Next Monday, we have two other committee meetings. We have our Finance Committee and our Insurance Oversight Committee. And I'm sure the things talked about in our audit as they relate to insurance will be an important part of that conversation. So we'll get back to you on that. And then just keep in mind next week, Wednesday, we have an early out for the whole district heading into Thanksgiving break, and hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving. A couple other things to report back to you on. Excited to announce that two of our students from Spring Creek Middle School named, I don't have their last names on here, but one is named Skyla and the other is named Nathan. They both applied for and were accepted to be part of the State Superintendent's Student Advisory Group for Education. So we have two students from Spring Creek Middle who are going to be advising or providing input and feedback to State Superintendent Joan Ebert. And that's great. We had 4 students apply. We had to narrow it down to 2, and it wasn't a guarantee that both would be accepted, but both of ours were. So we're really, really proud of those middle schoolers for jumping into such an effort. Really excited to see how they do on that. So congrats to them. Last week I referenced Brooke brought up that she noticed on the accounts payable that there was a renewal of the partnership with the Cook Center for Human Connection. So attached, I'm not going to go through the whole presentation, but attached to this agenda item is a Cook Center for Human Connection presentation, which includes data among other things such as feedback and comments and value of the program as shared by participants in the program. So that data is there. For those who are on our finance committee, we'll discuss that a little bit more next week when we have it. I did want to make sure, so last week or 2 weeks ago when I brought this up, I did say that there were some kind of off the cuff just to explain some of the changes. And so I wanted to come and give a little more clear explanation of those for you. So starting this month of November, ECSD families and the wider Elko County community will have access to webinars Monday through Thursday, and those will either be at 4 p.m. or 6 p.m. And those who join will, it's not exclusive to it's not just your county. They join other families across the country who will be watching these webinars in real time. This format, unlike last year's mental health webinar series, allows families to access a wider variety of topics more frequently through parentguidance.org. For example, in just 1 month, families can now view as many webinars as they previously could over the course of 5 months. So it's so much more ongoing access and availability to those, and it's pretty great. Registering guarantees that they'll receive a recording of the webinar if they're unable to attend. So that's a big change to the mental health series. They have a new element that comes along with the partnership called Ask a Therapist Live. That takes place once a month and offers a unique opportunity for parents to engage directly with a licensed family therapist. Parents can ask questions anonymously and receive personalized answers in real time. To access the calendar for both the mental health series, like the monthly calendar, as well as the Ask a Therapist Live, all of our school websites, as well as the district website, have that information under the Mental Health Resources tab at the top right corner. And we also will be sending out those through emails and our social media. And then parent coaching still remains available in the exact same format. And we continue to see additional participation in that. The last item I wanted to share with you is that this is a topic that we've just had to keep kicking the can down the road, but we're taking some actionable steps with it starting tomorrow morning, and that is the development of, I guess this would be the feedback phase or the opinion gathering phase of cell phone policies in all of our schools. So up to this point, we have like a very kind of vague and definitely not often followed policy as it pertains to, and it's not even specifically about cell phones, it's about just technology in schools. And so Dr. Byers presented some very compelling information as well as a request for us to review this process. So we're at a point where we feel comfortable to do that. So we have a survey that has been developed and is going to go out to everyone tomorrow morning. It is actually live on our website right now, but I wanted to report it to you here before we send them out in the morning. And so I will send an email out to all of our staff. Our site administrators will make sure to emphasize the participation of students. We very much want students to share their opinion on it. And families will also receive an email, and then we'll of course put this out through our social media and our app. And again, as I said, it's already available on the website. We're going to leave that survey up for basically between now and the next board meeting. And at that time, I'll pull data kind of just before the board meeting so we can gather as many responses as possible. And we'll let you know what people said about it. So if you'd like to see what that survey says and you just can't wait, then you can go tonight and look at the website, or since I'll send it out to the whole district, you'll get an email in the morning to your district email as well, and you can check it out there. But definitely encourage all parents, staff, students, everyone to participate in that survey. And then the follow-up phase, and I'll reiterate this in 2 weeks, but following the collection of those responses, the next step would be to put together a committee that would consist of all of the above. And the survey actually allows for people to volunteer to participate in such a committee. We obviously won't be able to, if 40 people say they want to be on, we're not going to be able to do that, but we will select from people who are interested in being on that committee and try to get varying perspectives. And then from there, they would help us look at a draft policy, see how we want to edit it, et cetera. So I'm letting you know that that's the process. You can certainly express your voice as board members through that survey. And then I also invite you to, if you have anything that you just really feel like you think ought to be represented in such a policy or for consideration anyway, definitely send me an email or you can give me a call and I can take notes on it. But if you want it like official, like I officially asked you to consider this, then maybe an email is probably a good idea. And yeah, so we'll be well on our way. Our hope is if we can kind of keep to the timeline that, you know, possibly by second semester or sorry, by beginning of second semester, or maybe shortly after the beginning of the second semester, we could theoretically have a policy in place for this. So I anticipate it's going to be a highly opinionated policy. So yeah, just get ready. But I'm happy we're moving on it. I haven't had, I don't think, an email that's come through from any national organization that doesn't talk about cell phone bans, cell phone policy, cell phone restrictions, cell phone statistics and data and ages of cell. I mean, it's all over the place. And so it's a hot button issue. And I think it's good that we're looking at it. And those are all of my items.
Thank you, CJ. Comments or questions for our superintendent? All righty, a couple of quick things. Brooke wasn't able to make it tonight. She did ask about the grid analysis. Again, I appreciate the fact that we had the document from the Cook Center. But when 33 slides is a lot of data to try to narrow down. Yep. If we could get recommendations from you on what a grid would look like that we would be able to utilize for a quick snapshot, something for us to look at that would get us the data that we need that would back up the reason why you're doing that, that would be great. It's always difficult to say, is this worth it? If it saves the life of one child or one person, then, well, was that worth it? You know, it's hard to quantify that, but I do notice that our adoption rates right now are 0.6% on parent guidance overall, and it's stayed flat for almost a year. So it's one of those things that it's just like, all right, how do we measure how effective we're being on being able to deliver this? And are there other things? With that said, I think that what you said at the end of wider access is terrific. And I hope that we've reached out to some of our other support service organizations across the county, Family Resource Center, PACE, the communities and schools, et cetera, across each of our communities have different things that this could be really beneficial to even just their staff, but particularly their clients. So thank you. If there's nothing else, we will move on to 5.01. Items from the board. Yes, ma'am. Take it away, Miss Caitlin. Look at that, jumping right in.
So, just for wider context, I'm a part of the State Association of Student Councils, and most of the Elko County School District high schools and middle schools are member schools of this, and it's sanctioned under the NIAA. And the regional conference is upcoming, and it is happening this Friday. And I would just like to spotlight the Elko and Spring Creek councils, so Elko took a field trip to Spring Creek and then helped us with all the preparation for the conference, which last year Spring Creek had the honor of hosting, but it was a great stress because it was just one council accommodating the entire region with no outside help. And I just wanted to express my gratitude for the Elko Student Council, which bussed over and spent their entire school day with us and helped us make so many decorations and do a bunch of administrative work. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Jeff, anything to add?
No. I'll save it for, we got the conference coming, but we'll get that a couple days before. Our next meeting's on the 3rd and I can cover it then.
Okay, sounds good. Teresa? Josh? Susan?
I do. I just want to say congratulations to Teresa, Matt, Josh, Adriana for election results, that you'll be on the board still. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you to our student board member. Appreciate your input. And as far as the SPP meetings, it's very interesting to hear what different schools are doing and then to hear them say, oh, that's a good idea. So I like that you put something together that they can meet and kind of talk about what they're doing and get ideas from one another, because I know they don't get that opportunity a whole lot as admins. So, and I appreciate the invite that I can just listen in. It was, for me, it was fun. It's like to them. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Adriana?
Anything to say?
All righty. Happy Thanksgiving all. Hope you enjoy your time with friends and family and loved ones, et cetera. With that, we will move on to 6.01, approval of the accounts payable.
Move to approve the accounts payable. Well,
Is there a
that's
second?
fine, that's
Second.
Who wants it? All right. Okay.
Got to get in the minutes somehow. You guys are quick.
Any disclosures?
I will disclose that I have a family member who is employed by Wells Rural Electric, but I will not be abstaining.
And I have to disclose that I work for Wolf Mechanical, so I will be abstaining from voting.
All righty. With those disclosures, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes. 7.01 is the final input from the public. Mrs. Hoffman.
Lynn Hoffman, I wasn't going to speak, and I don't even know where to start. Things were so simple when I was in first grade at Grammar 2. We did reading, writing, arithmetic. I heard nothing about any of that tonight. I heard that there were 1,000 suspensions last year out of 9,700 students. Some of them may be repeat suspensions, but it makes me wonder what's going on. I heard that the board didn't know about really what is going on. And I think it's really important, whether it's parents, whether it is drugs, whether it is whatever. I think it's really important that you, as the board, has an idea of what is happening in our schools. Each of those suspensions probably affects a student, maybe more than one student. Is this because of the legislature? Is it because of restorative discipline or whatever you call it? You know, why are these things happening? I heard that we're probably going to pay probably $80 million for a school in Oahe for 300 and something kids. When we have the central office falling apart or whatever that building is, when we have the problems in the Oahe school right now, when we have grammar that has to have the things done that have to be done. I wish there were more people here at these meetings because I was shocked. I was shocked that we had 4 not suspensions, but when you kick them out in the last 4 weeks. But you guys didn't know about it. We did elect you all, and I think it is really important because it is our responsibility to elect you. It is really important that you ask the questions you need to ask, that you don't do everything yourself, but you are our elected representatives. Now, Lee was really good about being tactful. It's why he won his elections. I did not win mine. But I am going to tell you that I'm going to continue to come to these meetings just like Lee did. I'm going to go to the commission meetings. I'm going to go to the city council meetings because we elect all of you. You are our representatives. And another thing, tomorrow, this probably doesn't really affect you very much, but tomorrow the county commission is going to be writing a letter supporting Pete Gogachia to become the regent from our area. And that regent job is now empty, just like Lois Tarkanian's job as regent. She died yesterday or the day before. She is going to be appointed, or her position will be appointed by the governor too for the next 2 years. So there's a lot of stuff going on that affects all of us.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman.
Thanks.
Any additional further public comment? All right, seeing none, then we will stand in adjournment and we will see you all next month. Thank you. Have a great night. Safe travels home.
Next month seems rather.